My name is Sanina Abuzir. I'm 19 years old, born and raised in Berlin. I completed 12 years of school and passed my Abitur in 2022. Since October, I've been studying law at the University of Leipzig. On the 17th of April of this year, I booked a flight to Tel Aviv to visit my family. Since I had entered without any issues in September of last year, I thought it was unlikely that I would experience what happened in the 38 hours from April 17th to the 18th. I arrived at the Berlin airport 4 hours before my scheduled 8 a.m. flight with precaution. I was aware that the questioning before entering Israel, especially with my background, could take longer. I went through 2 security checks, was questioned by the police about my intentions, and they then thoroughly searched my suitcases and bags. I arrived at my gate shortly before 7 a.m. When I arrived at my gate, an employee came up to me and asked for my ticket. Although I paid extra to keep my luggage on the plane, I was the only one forced to check my luggage and pay an additional 80 euros. I asked the employee to make sure that my luggage really gets on the plane since most of my valuables were in the suitcase. When I asked if I could take important items out of my suitcase, she replied that there was no time for that. She gave me the tag number of my suitcase and sent me to the plane. When I arrived in Tel Aviv, I scanned my passport and received the blue visa card as confirmation of my existing German citizenship. So, I went to the last passport control before baggage claim to confirm my entry. The gentleman behind the counter looked at me, didn't even scan my passport, and sent me to a fenced area when he realized my last name, where I met other, particularly Muslim and Arabic origin individuals. They told me that they had been waiting for hours to pick up their luggage. I googled what could be the reason for this segregation between us and the other German passengers. On the website of the Foreign Office, the following information was available. German citizens with even suspected Arabic or Iranian descent or Islamic religious affiliation must expect intensive security questioning and possible refusal of entry. In the event of refusal of entry, detention in a deportation center until the time of return is common. A lady came up to me with a form and handed me a pen. First name, origin, father's name, grandfather's name. I knew what she was getting at. Sinin Abuzid, German. I was made to wait for nearly 3 hours until the lady called me up for the first time. They escorted me to a room. They asked me about my family members, where they lived, their addresses, their phone numbers, and their Palestinian ID numbers. The woman read out the names of my family members, which I had to confirm. Then they asked me to return to the waiting area. Another hour passed, and I was called again, this time by a man. I entered the room, this time with my phone. He ordered me to provide my fingerprints and then handed me a deportation form that I was supposed to sign. The reason for my deportation was listed as prevention of illegal immigration considerations. When I questioned him as to why I should sign the documents if I was a German citizen, he replied that I was not German and that I was nothing more than a dirty Palestinian. He continued to demand that I sign the document and accompany him to the deportation center. I asked him to wait while I called my mother. While I was on the phone with my mom, he got up, grabbed me by the shoulder, and threatened me with tear gas and handcuffs. My mother heard these words before I hung up and started recording the conversation. I explained to him repeatedly that I am German and that I would not go with him easily. I told him that I had the right to call the embassy or foreign office of Germany. He kept insisting that I was nothing more than a refugee and that he could do whatever he wanted with me in his country. He pulled me out of the office and back into the passport control area, where several security personnel approached me. They repeatedly tried to force me to hand over my belongings and go into the fenced area until they could take me to the deportation center. I refused. I was alone and I didn't know how to protect myself except by asserting my right to stay in a safe place. My priority was to keep my phone. They threatened me again with the police and told me that they could handle everything with absolute force. Eventually, I allowed them to escort me to the fenced area. I asked them to let me use the restroom, and an hour later, a woman escorted me to the toilet and forbade me from locking the door while I sat there feeling vulnerable and dehumanized. She then pushed me back into the fenced area. Security personnel repeatedly insulted me as a sharmuta, an Arabic word for slut, told me to go back to where I came from, that I had no right to see my family, and that I was nothing more than an illegal refugee. I repeatedly asked them for my suitcase and my passport, but they denied me that privilege. After several more hours, the immigration officer, as he called himself, arrived. He came towards me and ordered me to hand over my phone and come with him. I became louder and refused to move. He approached me and grabbed my arms. My first reflex was self-defense, so I grabbed a chair and hurled it between him and me to create a barricade. I told him not to touch me. He kept screaming in my face, telling me to come with him to his center. I asked him for his ID and the address of the center, to which he replied that I had no right to this information. He grabbed me again and said that I could shower there and sleep with others in one room. With all due respect, I'm a 19-year-old girl. I will not go to an unknown location without my phone to shower and sleep with strangers under the surveillance of foreign officers. Not without my passport, not without my belongings, and certainly not without a way to contact people outside. It took all my strength to resist the security guards and their plans. I became louder and more defensive. I asked friends and family to call the embassy or the foreign office. The authorities promised